look at your arm right now. Go ahead, really look at it. You'll probably see some fine hair, maybe barely visible, unless you're in the right light. Now, imagine that same arm covered in thick, dark fur, dense enough to keep you warm on a freezing night, protective enough to shield your skin from thorns and insects. That's what your ancestors looked like, not your great-great-grandparents. We're talking millions of years back, and somewhere along the way, we lost it, almost all of it. Today, humans are the only primates walking around essentially naked. Chimpanzees have fur, gorillas have fur, orangutans, bonobos, every single one of our closest relatives is covered head to toe in protective hair. But us, we're bizarre. We're the weird ones. Out of over 5,000 mammal species on Earth, we're one of the very few that decided fur wasn't necessary anymore. We're in the same category as elephants, rhinos, hippos, and whales. And there's a reason those animals are hairless. They're either massive and live in hot climates, or they live in water. We're neither. So, what happened? Why did we lose our fur when every other primate kept theirs? If your eyes feel heavier now, that's perfectly natural. You don't need to remember any of this. Just let the story unfold at its own quiet pace, like a distant fire flickering in the dark. This isn't just a curiosity. This is one of the most important questions in human evolution, because losing our fur changed everything. It changed how we hunt, how we survive heat, how we communicate, even how we think about each other. It's written into every aspect of being human, and most of us never stop to wonder about it. The mystery of our naked skin has obsessed scientists for over a century. Charles Darwin himself was puzzled by it. He could explain why giraffes have long necks and why birds have different beak shapes. But human hairlessness? That one stumped him. Since then, researchers have proposed at least a dozen different theories. Some think we lost our fur because we started running long distances in the hot African sun. Others believe it happened when our ancestors spent time in and around water. Some scientists argue it was about parasites, and there are theories involving social signaling, thermoregulation, even brain development. Here's the thing, they might all be partially right. Evolution doesn't usually happen for just one reason. It's messier than that. Multiple pressures working together, each one nudging our ancestors toward less and less body hair over millions of years. Let your breathing slow now. Let that thought rest softly like a stone settling into still water. For most of our history, we weren't naked. We were furry, completely covered in body hair from head to toe. Just like every other primate, on the planet. Picture one of your distant ancestors walking through an African forest 6 million years ago. They're about 4 feet tall, walking upright, more often than their chimpanzee cousins, but still spending plenty of time in the trees, and they're covered in thick, coarse hair. Not the fine, almost invisible vellus hair that covers most of your body today. We're talking real fur, dense enough to see from a distance, thick enough to provide actual insulation. Every human alive today still carries the genes for full body hair. They're right there in your DNA, mostly switched off, but occasionally expressing themselves. Men with hairy backs, women with hirsutism, children born with hypertrichosis, a rare condition where they're covered in thick body hair. These aren't genetic mistakes, they're evolutionary throwbacks, glimpses of what we all used to look like. The genes responsible for hair growth are ancient, so ancient that we share most of them with mice, dogs, and every other mammal on the planet. We have all the genes for thick body hair. We just have additional regulatory sequences that suppress their expression over most of our bodies. It's like having a fully functional car sitting in your garage with the emergency brake permanently engaged. All the parts work. They're just being held back by a few extra control mechanisms that evolved relatively recently. Let your body sink deeper now into whatever surface holds you. There's nowhere else you need to be. Hair loss in humans wasn't about losing the genes for hair. It was about evolving new switches that turn those genes off in specific locations. Look at a chimpanzee. Under that dark fur, their skin is pale, almost white. The hair isn't just decoration. It's protection from the sun, insulation against cold nights, a barrier against insects and parasites. If our ancestors had kept their fur, they wouldn't have needed dark skin. The hair would have provided protection from UV radiation. The fact that populations develop dark skin after losing their hair tells us the hair loss came first, and the pigmentation adaptation came later. Fur is one of nature's most sophisticated climate control systems. It works both ways, keeping heat in when it's cold, keeping heat out when it's hot. On a cold night in the African forest, when temperatures could drop to 50 degrees or lower, that fur would have been the difference between comfortable sleep and dangerous hypothermia. In the heat of the day, properly maintained fur actually helps keep you cool. The hair creates a barrier between direct sunlight and the skin. Watch a lion or a wolf in the summer. They don't lose their coats. The fur shades their skin, allowing air circulation underneath while blocking the most intense heat. Primate fur isn't soft and fluffy like a rabbit's. It's coarse, sometimes dense enough to deflect thorns, prevent insect bites, cushion minor impacts. That layer of hair prevents countless small injuries that could lead to infections. And in a world before antibiotics, infection was a death sentence. Modern great apes spend hours every day grooming, picking through each other's fur to remove parasites and debris. This isn't just hygienic, it's social. Grooming bonds, strengthen group cohesion, establish hierarchies, maintain alliances. For our furry ancestors, that coat of hair was the foundation of their entire social system. Primate hair isn't uniform. It forms patterns, highlights, color variations that help individuals recognize each other. It can be raised when an animal is angry or frightened, making them look larger and more threatening. Chimpanzees have distinctive facial hair patterns. Gorillas develop silverbacks as they mature. Our ancestors almost certainly had similar markings, hair patterns that helped them navigate complex social hierarchies without constant conflict. Your breathing has become so slow now, you barely notice it. In, out, like waves lapping against an ancient shore. So when did we start losing all this functional, protective body hair? The honest answer is we don't know exactly. Hair doesn't fossilize, but we can make educated guesses based on indirect evidence. The earliest hominin species, who lived 6 to 7 million years ago, were almost certainly fully furred. They lived in forests, moved like other apes. No reason to lose the hair. Even Australopithecus species, who lived from about 4 to 2 million years ago, probably retained most of their body hair. The shift probably began somewhere between 2 and 1.5 million years ago, with the emergence of the genus Homo. Early Homo species showed significant changes in body proportions. They were taller, more linear, with longer legs relative to their torsos. This is a body plan optimized for efficient walking and heat dissipation in open environments. When you commit to a tall, linear body plan adapted for hot, open environments, fur starts becoming a liability. Let that image rest now, like a seed planted in fertile soil, not demanding an answer, just waiting. Studies of the genes responsible for skin pigmentation suggest that dark skin evolved somewhere between 1.2 million and 1.8 million years ago. This matters because dark skin only becomes necessary after you lose the protective hair. Natural selection would have strongly favored darker pigmentation as soon as hair loss exposed the skin to direct sunlight. By the time Homo heidelbergensis appeared around 700,000 years ago, our ancestors were probably mostly hairless, not completely. They almost certainly retained head hair. They kept eyebrows, which channel sweat away from the eyes. They maintained eyelashes, which protect against dust and debris. But the dense primate standard body hair was gone. Our ancestors had become, by primate standards, bizarrely naked. Those remnants we still carry, the hair on our heads, our eyebrows, our eyelashes, these aren't random leftovers. Each patch of hair we retain serves a specific function. Head hair protects the brain from both overheating and hypothermia. Eyebrows keep salt-laden sweat from running into our eyes. Eyelashes protect against airborne particles. The hair in our armpits and groin helps disperse pheromones. We are, in essence, strategically hairless. We lost the fur where it would have prevented effective cooling, but kept it where it served crucial protective or signaling functions. This wasn't random. This was natural selection operating with surgical precision over hundreds of thousands of years. If you're not even here anymore, that's perfectly fine. Wherever you've drifted, it's exactly where you need to be. Why would evolution strip away a system that had worked perfectly for millions of years? What environmental pressure could have been strong enough to override all those advantages that fur provided? Between 6 and 7 million years ago, our ancestors were living comfortable lives in the forests of Africa. They were covered in thick body hair, just like modern chimpanzees and gorillas. Life was good. Then the climate changed. This was a slow, grinding transformation that took millions of years. Africa was getting drier. Forests were shrinking. And in their place, vast grasslands were spreading across the continent. Let your mind wander now. Let the images blur at the edges. Ancient grassland stretching toward distant horizons. These weren't the tidy lawns you see in suburban neighborhoods. These were wild savannas, open territories where tall grasses waved in the hot wind, where scattered trees provided occasional shade, and where the temperature during midday could reach absolutely brutal levels. Our ancestors had a choice. They could retreat with the forests, or they could adapt to the new environment. Some populations chose the first option. They stayed in the forests and eventually became modern chimpanzees and bonobos. But one lineage, our lineage, took the risk. They moved out into the open, and this decision changed everything. In the trees, you could move from one shady spot to another, but out on the grasslands, there was nowhere to hide from the sun. If you wanted to find food, you had to walk for miles under brutal heat. Body hair is great insulation when you need to stay warm, but when you're exercising, In 100-degree heat, it becomes a death trap. Fur traps heat close to your body, preventing it from dissipating. Modern chimpanzees deal with this by avoiding midday activity. They rest in the shade during the hottest hours. But our ancestors couldn't afford that luxury because around the same time they were developing something revolutionary: bipedalism, walking upright on two legs. Let everything slow even more now, like honey pouring from a jar, thick, golden, timeless. Walking on two legs uses less energy than knuckle walking on all fours. But bipedalism had another crucial advantage that's often overlooked. It reduced sun exposure. When a chimpanzee walks on all fours, its entire back is exposed to direct overhead sunlight. But when you stand upright, only your head and shoulders get hit by the midday sun. Everything else is shielded by your own body. This reduces heat load by about 60%. That's enormous. But even with reduced sun exposure, the savanna was still brutally hot. And this is where hairlessness enters the picture. Our ancestors needed a better cooling system. Sweating. Most mammals only have sweat glands in limited locations, like their paws. Humans are different. We're covered in eccrine sweat glands, millions of them distributed across our entire body. These glands produce thin, watery sweat that evaporates quickly. It's one of the most effective cooling systems in the animal kingdom. But here's the crucial detail. Eccrine sweat glands only work efficiently on bare skin. If you're covered in thick fur, the sweat gets trapped in the hair. As our ancestors adapted to savanna life, natural selection began favoring individuals with less body hair and more eccrine sweat glands. These individuals could stay active during the hottest parts of the day. Most importantly, they could practice persistence hunting. This was the game changer. You might not even hear these words anymore, and that's perfectly fine. Just let them float like smoke. You pick out a target animal, usually something like an antelope. Then you just start jogging after it, not sprinting, just a steady jog. The animal bolts, running at full speed until it's far ahead of you. But you keep jogging. Eventually, you catch up again. The animal runs away again. You keep jogging over and over for hours, sometimes for an entire day. The animal is faster than you in short bursts, but it can't sweat effectively. It can only cool down by panting. Meanwhile, you're cooling down continuously through evaporative sweating. You never have to stop. Eventually, the animal simply collapses from heat exhaustion, and you walk up and kill it. Modern hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari Desert still practice persistence hunting And this hunting strategy only works if you're hairless and covered in eccrine sweat glands. With fur, you'd overheat and collapse long before your prey did. Without fur, you become the most dangerous long-distance predator on the planet. Between 3 and 4 million years ago, we see a dramatic expansion of grasslands across East Africa. By 2 million years ago, we have early Homo species that show clear adaptations for long-distance running, changed leg proportions, modified foot architecture, enlarged buttock muscles. These are the bodies of persistence hunters. Rest now. Let the ancient runners fade into mist. Let their footsteps echo softly, then disappear. But there's another story waiting to be told. A more controversial story, a theory so strange that when it was first proposed, the scientific establishment tried to bury it, but it keeps coming back. The Aquatic Ape Theory, sometime between 7 and 8 million years ago, our ancestors weren't living on the African savanna. They were living along coastlines, in estuaries, spending significant time in shallow water, not as fully aquatic creatures like dolphins or seals, but as semi-aquatic primates. And during this aquatic phase, they lost their fur. The theory was first proposed by marine biologist Alistair Hardy in 1960. And from the moment it was published, the scientific establishment hated it. Paleoanthropologists lined up to tear it apart. But Morgan and Hardy were asking legitimate questions. Why are humans the only primates without fur? Every other ape, they're all covered in thick body hair. The Savanna Hypothesis says we lost our fur to stay cool, but plenty of savanna mammals have fur. Zebras, wildebeest, lions, they all manage just fine with full coats. So why did only humans need to become naked? The Aquatic Ape Theory offers a different answer. Look at aquatic mammals, dolphins, whales, hippos, manatees. What do they all have in common? They're hairless or nearly hairless. Let that thought rest softly like a stone dropping through dark water. Marine mammals lose their fur because it becomes a liability in water. Wet fur loses its insulating properties, creates drag when swimming. Far better to lose the fur entirely and develop other adaptations like thick subcutaneous fat. And this is where the theory gets interesting. Humans are weird among primates. We have a layer of fat directly beneath our skin that's far thicker than any other ape. Chimps and gorillas are basically all muscle. But humans, even lean humans, have a significant layer of subcutaneous fat. Babies are born chubby. You know what other mammals have extensive subcutaneous fat? Aquatic ones. Seals, whales, hippos. They use this fat layer for insulation in water where fur won't work. Humans have exactly this adaptation. Then there's breath control. Humans are the only primates who can consciously control their breathing. Chimps can't do it. Gorillas can't do it. But human babies can hold their breath underwater from birth. It's an instinctive response. This is called the bradycardic response. Adult humans can train themselves to hold their breath for minutes at a time. Free divers regularly go 4, 5, even 10 minutes without breathing. This isn't normal for a terrestrial mammal, but it's completely normal for semi-aquatic ones. If your eyes feel heavier now, that's perfectly natural. Humans have relatively long legs compared to other apes, but they're also pretty good for wading through shallow water. Stand a human, a chimp, and a gorilla in chest-deep water. The chimp and gorilla panic. The human instinctively stands upright, walks forward. It feels natural. Human hands have partially webbed fingers. Other apes don't have this. Why would humans have vestigial webbing if we'd never spent time in water? Human infants are born helpless. Put a newborn chimp on its mother's chest, it'll grab her fur and hold on. Put a newborn human on their mother's chest, they slide right off. But human babies are natural swimmers. From birth, they can coordinate their limbs in a swimming motion, as if that's where we evolved to spend our earliest months. Let your mind rest on that image for a moment. Ancient coastlines, where land meets water. The archaeological record does show that early humans exploited aquatic resources extensively. Shell middens, massive piles of discarded shellfish shells, appear at human sites. Going back hundreds of thousands of years, some researchers think the omega-3 fatty acids from seafood might have been crucial for brain development. But here's where the theory falls apart. Despite decades of searching, nobody's found the smoking gun. No fossils of semi-aquatic hominins with obvious aquatic adaptations. The fossil record shows early humans in savanna environments, not aquatic ones. The mainstream scientific community has been brutal in its rejection. Every supposed aquatic adaptation can be explained other ways. Hairlessness for thermoregulation, subcutaneous fat for energy storage, breath control as a byproduct of speech development. We don't have flippers. We don't have streamlined body shapes. We don't have the massive lung capacity of diving mammals. The similarities are superficial. Most damningly, the theory requires a massive gap in the fossil record. Yet, the theory won't die. It keeps coming back because it explains certain things so elegantly. The hairlessness, the fat, the breath control. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Maybe our ancestors weren't fully aquatic, but they weren't fully terrestrial either. Maybe they were facultative aquatic animals, creatures equally comfortable on land and in water. Early humans living along lake shores and coastlines, wading through shallows to gather shellfish, not spending enough time in water to become truly aquatic, but enough to lose their fur. Studies of human population that have lived by water for thousands of years show adaptations for diving and swimming. The Bajau people of Southeast Asia have evolved larger spleens that store oxygenated blood. This suggests humans can adapt to aquatic lifestyles relatively quickly. So maybe the aquatic ape theory isn't entirely wrong. Maybe it's just overstated. Maybe our ancestors did spend significant time in and around water, not enough to turn us into seals or dolphins, but enough to make us the only apes who can swim naturally. The scientific community still rejects the theory in its strong form, but elements of it are slowly being incorporated into mainstream thinking, not as a replacement for the Savanna Hypothesis, but as a complement. Let everything soften now. Let the waves, gentle and rhythmic, carry you deeper into quiet water. But there's another possibility, one that's less romantic than running across sunlit savannas, less controversial than swimming in ancient lakes. It's grittier, more disturbing, and possibly more important than any other explanation. Parasites. Not the most pleasant topic for a bedtime story, but what lives in fur might have been the real driving force behind human hairlessness. Let's start with something simple. You're a human ancestor living 2 million years ago. You're covered in fur just like your chimp relatives, and that fur is home to an entire ecosystem of creatures that see you as their personal planet. Lice crawling through the thick hair, ticks burrowing into your skin, fleas jumping from individual to individual, mites living in hair follicles. And these aren't just annoying, they're deadly. Your breathing has become so slow now, you barely notice it. In, out, like the gentle rise and fall of an ancient tide. Because here's the thing about fur-dwelling parasites. They don't just make you itch, they carry diseases. Typhus, spread by body lice, has killed millions. Plague, carried by fleas, has wiped out entire civilizations. Lyme disease, delivered by ticks, can damage your heart, your nervous system. In tropical environments, the parasite load on furred mammals is staggering. Modern primates in equatorial Africa can carry dozens of different parasite species simultaneously, each one draining energy, transmitting pathogens, reducing the host's ability to survive and reproduce. Natural selection is brutal in these situations. If parasites are reducing your health, making you weak, giving you fever, you're less likely to survive long enough to have children. Even if you do survive, you're less attractive as a potential mate. This is where the hygiene hypothesis gets interesting. Some anthropologists argue that the loss of body hair wasn't primarily about cooling or swimming. It was about creating an environment where parasites couldn't thrive. Think about the difference between a furred surface and bare skin. Fur provides insulation, darkness, humidity, countless hiding places. It's the perfect habitat for lice. It's ideal for ticks. It's heaven for fleas. Bare skin, by contrast, is a hostile environment for parasites. No place to hide, no hair shafts to grip. Any tick or louse on bare skin is immediately visible. The sun directly hits the skin, creating temperatures too high for many parasites to survive. Rain washes away eggs and larvae. The selection pressure would have been intense. Let that image rest now, like a leaf settling onto still water. Individuals with less body hair would have lower parasite loads. They'd be healthier, more energetic, better able to hunt and gather. Crucially, they'd be more attractive to potential mates. This is sexual selection at its most pragmatic. You're looking for clear skin, smooth, parasite-free skin that signals a healthy immune system in environments where parasites are a major cause of death. Choosing a mate with visible evidence of parasite resistance could be the difference between your children surviving or dying young. The genetic evidence supports this timeline in fascinating ways. We know humans have 3 types of lice: head lice, which live in scalp hair; body lice, which live in clothing; and pubic lice. The DNA of these lice species tells us when they diverged from each other. Body lice DNA suggests they split from head lice somewhere between 70,000 and 170,000 years ago. That's when body lice evolved to live in clothing rather than body hair, because there wasn't any body hair left to live in. This means humans had already lost most of their body hair by this point. Head lice DNA is much older, suggesting they've been with us for millions of years. The fact that we kept head hair but lost body hair is actually strong evidence for the parasite hypothesis. Head hair could be groomed by other group members. Social grooming is a major behavior in all primates, but you can't effectively groom your own back, your entire body surface, by losing body hair. But keeping head hair, early humans created a situation where parasites were confined to a manageable area. It's actually an elegant compromise. You may drift in and out now, and that's perfectly fine. The story continues, whether you hear every word or not. As human population began living in larger, more permanent groups, parasite transmission became a more serious problem. When you're a small band of 15 people, parasites have limited opportunities to spread. But when you're a group of 50 or 100 people, parasites can spread explosively. Species that live in large social groups and have thick fur suffer much higher parasite burdens. Humans were moving in the direction of larger groups. Every step toward bigger communities increased the selective pressure against body hair. Every generation, the individuals with less hair were slightly healthier over hundreds of thousands of years. This cumulative pressure stripped away the fur. Studies comparing infection rates between body regions show that hairy areas are more prone to bacterial and fungal infections than hairless areas. The warm, moist environment created by hair provides ideal conditions for pathogens. Of course, losing hair created new problems. Without fur, humans became vulnerable to sunburn, heat loss at night. But these costs were apparently worth the benefits of reduced parasite load, and humans solved these new problems with technology. Clothing for warmth and protection, shelter for avoiding sun and rain, fire for warmth during cold nights. The Parasite Hypothesis also explains some puzzling details. We didn't lose all our hair. We kept significant hair in the armpits and groin, areas that produce strong scent signals. This suggests that hair in these regions might have been retained for social signaling. We also kept our eyelashes and eyebrows, which served clear protective functions. And we kept our head hair, which could be long and thick. But head hair is unique. It's the one area of the body where other group members can effectively help with parasite control. Social grooming of head hair will become a major bonding behavior. Let everything soften now. Let the parasites fade into darkness. The timing of hair loss, probably between 1 and 2 million years ago, coincides with other major transitions. This is when brain size is increasing rapidly, when tool use is becoming sophisticated, when group sizes are growing. It's possible that hair loss was part of a package of adaptations that all reinforced each other. Bigger brains needed better cooling, which hairlessness provided. Larger groups needed better parasite control, which hairlessness enabled. Better tool use allowed clothing manufacture, which compensated for the loss of fur's protective functions. None of these factors alone might have been enough, but together they created a situation where losing fur provided multiple simultaneous advantages. Parasites might not have been the only reason we lost our hair, but they were probably a major part of the equation. Every time you look at your smooth arm or leg, you're seeing the result of millions of years of warfare against creatures so small you can barely see them. Creatures that once called your ancestors' fur home. But let's step back from parasites and survival for a moment, because there's another revolution happening in the background of this story. Something so fundamental to what makes us human that we barely notice it anymore. I'm talking about sweat. You are covered, absolutely covered, in somewhere between 2 and 4 million of specialized glands. That might sound gross, but it's actually one of the most sophisticated cooling systems ever evolved by any mammal on Earth. And it only works because you're naked. If your eyes feel heavier, that's perfectly natural. You don't need to remember any of this. Every mammal faces the same fundamental problem. Bodies generate heat. For most mammals, this isn't a huge deal. They can pant, seek shade. But for human ancestors spreading across Africa, the heat problem was becoming critical. They were walking, endlessly walking, tracking game animals, and they were doing it under the African sun in the middle of the day. Walking generates about 4 times as much heat as resting. Walking under direct sunlight adds the entire radiant heat load of the sun. Do that in a fur coat and you die. Hypothermia, heat stroke, organ failure. Evolution had a choice to make. They developed something better. The human sweating system is genuinely extraordinary. We have eccrine sweat glands distributed across almost every square inch of our body surface. Your forehead alone has about 200 sweat glands per square centimeter. And here's the really clever part. These glands produce a carefully calibrated mixture of water, salt, and other dissolved substances. When this sweat reaches your skin surface and evaporates, it removes heat, a lot of heat. For this system to work, the sweat has to reach your skin surface and evaporate into the surrounding air. And here's where fur becomes a problem. Thick body hair creates a microclimate next to your skin, a layer of trapped air that's warm, humid, and relatively still. Sweat that evaporates in this microclimate doesn't cool you efficiently. Remove the fur, though, and everything changes. Sweat reaches bare skin. Airflow across that skin carries away the evaporated moisture. Immediately, the cooling effect is dramatic. Your breathing has become so slow now, you barely notice it. In, out, in, out. This wasn't just convenient. This was transformative. They developed persistence hunting. You find a herd of antelope. You start walking toward them. They run away. They're covered in fur. After a few minutes, they have to stop and pant. While they're stopped, You keep walking hour after hour. Your eccrine sweat glands are pumping out moisture. Your bare skin is evaporating it efficiently. Your body temperature stays stable after 6, 8, maybe 12 hours. The antelope collapses and you walk up and kill it. This sounds almost like science fiction, but it's not. Modern persistence hunters in the Kalahari Desert still use these techniques, but evolution doesn't give gifts without costs. Fur isn't just insulation against cold, it's also protection against sunlight. The African sun at midday delivers about 1,000 watts of radiant energy. Naked humans needed a different solution. They developed dark skin. Melanin is nature's sunscreen. It absorbs UV radiation before it can damage the DNA in skin cells. This is why all early humans had dark skin. Not some of them, all of them. This wasn't a racial characteristic, it was a survival requirement. So the package evolved together. Less body hair, more sweat glands, darker skin, each adaptation reinforcing the others. And this system had another unexpected benefit. It helped solve the brain problem. Your brain is an energy hog. 3 pounds of tissue, consuming about 20% of your body's total energy budget. But energy consumption means heat production. Your brain generates about 15 watts of thermal energy continuously. Most mammals keep their brain temperatures slightly lower than their core body temperature, but the human lineage was evolving larger and larger brains, more neurons, more metabolic activity, more heat. The sweating revolution solved this. With efficient whole-body cooling, humans could maintain stable core temperatures. This meant the brain never experienced dangerous temperature spikes. The brain could grow larger, consume more energy. Some researchers think this created a positive feedback loop. Better body cooling allowed larger brains, enabled more sophisticated hunting techniques. More sophisticated hunting provided better nutrition, supported even larger brains, and so on, spiraling upward. But there was another consequence of this sweating revolution. It created new social requirements, because efficient sweating requires water, a lot of water. A human engaged in moderate activity can lose 2 to 3 liters of water per hour. This meant human ancestors couldn't range far from water sources. They needed to cooperate, sharing knowledge about water sources. Let yourself sink deeper now. Your body weightless, your mind drifting like smoke. The sweating revolution didn't just help humans survive in hot environments, it helped them thrive. That persistence hunting capability worked anywhere. Prey animals had to stop and pant. This gave human ancestors access to resources that other predators couldn't efficiently exploit. The big cats hunted in dawn and dusk ambushes. Wild dogs hunted in coordinated sprints. But humans could hunt in the middle of the day. They could pursue prey to exhaustion over distances that no sprint predator could match. This wasn't the only reason humans lost their fur, but the thermoregulation revolution. This was transformative. This was the adaptation that let humans become pursuit predators. This was what let human brains grow large without cooking inside their skulls. This was what forced human ancestors to develop sophisticated social systems. In short, this was one of the key innovations that made us human, and it only worked because we were willing to go naked. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because all those practical explanations, running in the heat, swimming in water, avoiding parasites, they only tell part of the story. There's another force at work. In human evolution, sexual selection, the simple fact that humans choose their mates, and those choices shape the evolution of our species. Think about it. You're a human living 800,000 years ago. Your population is expanding, and for the first time, you actually have choices about who you reproduce with. You can be selective. And what are you looking for? In every other primate species, the answer is fur. A thick, glossy coat indicates good health. But humans, we took the opposite path. We made the absence of fur the signal itself. 'Cause here's the thing about naked skin. It's honest. You can't fake it. You can't hide anything. Every blemish, every scar, every sign of disease or injury, it's all right there on display. Fur is forgiving. It covers imperfections. But smooth, exposed skin, it's a billboard advertising your genetic quality. If your eyes feel heavier now, that's perfectly natural. Think about what visible skin reveals. Parasites. You can see them immediately. Diseases, most of them, show up on the skin before anywhere else. Nutritional status. Healthy skin glows. Scars tell stories about past injuries. Even age itself becomes impossible to hide. Being able to assess health status at a glance would be incredibly valuable. And what better way to advertise your own health than to have nothing to hide? This is sexual selection in action. If early humans began preferring mates with less body hair, then individuals born with genes for reduced hairiness would have reproductive advantages. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the preference and the trait would reinforce each other. But notice what didn't disappear: head hair, facial hair in males, pubic and underarm hair. These patches remained because they served different signaling purposes. Head hair became a canvas for social signaling. Every human culture pays attention to hairstyles. They use them to signal age, status, availability. Human head hair is unique among primates. It keeps growing indefinitely. This suggests strong selection for long head hair. Facial hair in males tells a similar story. Males develop thick beards during puberty. This is a testosterone-dependent trait. Females generally don't develop beards, creating a clear visual distinction between sexes. Pubic and underarm hair appear during puberty, providing a clear signal of sexual maturity. These hair patches acted like biological flags, but the retention of hair in specific areas created something else. Contrast. Patches of hair against mostly bare skin drew attention to specific body regions. And this is where hairlessness really changed everything, because exposed facial skin allowed for something no other mammal could do: nuanced facial expressions. Let that thought rest softly, like a stone settling into still water. Think about trying to read the emotions of a chimp. You can do it, but it's difficult. Their faces are covered with fur, but human faces, we can detect micro expressions lasting fractions of a second. We can distinguish dozens of different emotional states: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, surprise. This is only possible because our faces are bare. Every tiny movement is visible. We evolved one of the most complex systems of facial communication in the animal kingdom, and it required naked skin to work. The same applies to blushing. This uniquely human trait only works because our facial skin is exposed. When we experience certain emotions, embarrassment, shame, attraction, blood rushes to the face, causing visible reddening. It's an involuntary signal that we can't fake. No other primate blushes, or if they do, you can't see it through their fur. But humans, we broadcast our internal states on our faces. This created a kind of emotional transparency. You could tell at a glance if someone was lying, uncomfortable, attracted to you. This made cooperation easier and deception harder. But sexual selection for hairlessness had another consequence. It exposed our skin to environmental variation, and skin, unlike fur, responds quickly to different selective pressures. When humans were confined to Africa, skin color variation was probably limited. Dark skin protected against intense UV radiation, but as populations moved into Europe and Asia, they encountered very different sunlight conditions, less intense UV. Dark skin in these environments became a disadvantage because skin needs to synthesize vitamin D, and that requires UV exposure. Too much melanin in low UV environments meant vitamin D deficiency. So natural selection lightened skin in northern populations. By the time modern humans reached Europe around 40,000 years ago, some populations had already begun evolving lighter skin tones. This created the remarkable diversity of human skin colors we see today. All of it became possible because we lost our fur. You might not even be here anymore, and that's perfectly fine. Wherever you've drifted, it's exactly where you need to be. But here's what's fascinating. Even as skin color diversified, preferences for certain skin qualities remained universal. Every human culture values smooth, clear, even-toned skin. This suggests the original selective pressure that drove hairlessness remained important. Different cultures developed different preferences for other aspects, but the underlying ability to see skin, to read health and emotion on its surface, that remained universal. We didn't just lose our fur to survive. We lost it to communicate, to signal, to advertise ourselves in a world where being seen meant being chosen. Now here's where things get really interesting, because losing fur isn't like losing weight. You can't just decide one day that you don't want hair anymore. Hair is encoded in your DNA. To go from a furry ape to a mostly naked human required specific genetic changes, and scientists have actually identified some of these mutations. Let everything soften now. Let the genetic code become abstract patterns, fading, dissolving. Hair growth is controlled by a complex network of genes. The gene HR, which stands for hairless, controls the transition between different phases of hair growth. But in humans, something changed. These mutations don't eliminate the gene entirely. Instead, they modify how the gene functions, reducing its activity in most parts of the body. The result: hair follicles that produce vellus hairs instead of terminal hairs. The thin, fine, almost invisible hairs that cover most of your body. Another crucial gene is FGF5. This gene determines how long hair can grow. In humans, FGF5 works normally in certain areas like your scalp, which is why hair on your head can grow several feet long. But in other areas, the gene has been modified. Then there's EDAR, a gene that controls the density and thickness of hair follicles. Different versions of this gene create different hair textures across human populations. This variant arose fairly recently, probably within the last 30,000 years, showing that human hairlessness is still evolving. When scientists use molecular clock analysis, they get a timeline that matches perfectly with the other evidence. The key mutations in HR appear to have become widespread around 1.2 million years ago. This is right around the time the fossil record suggests our ancestors were losing their fur, but losing hair created an immediate problem. Without fur, human skin was suddenly exposed to direct sunlight, intense, unfiltered ultraviolet radiation. The solution came through another set of genetic changes, mutations in genes that control skin pigmentation. The key gene here is MC1R. This gene determines how much melanin your skin cells produce. In our furry ancestors, MC1R didn't need to be particularly active. But once the fur was gone, pale skin became a death sentence. UV radiation breaks down folate in the bloodstream. Any individual with a pale skin mutation would have lower reproductive success. So natural selection acted fast. Within just a few thousand generations, human populations in Africa had evolved very dark skin. The MC1R gene shows evidence of strong positive selection. You may drift in and out, and that's perfectly fine. But modern human populations show tremendous variation in skin color. This variation tells us something important. The evolution of hairlessness and the evolution of skin color happened in stages. When our ancestors first lost their fur in Africa, they evolved dark skin as protection. But as human populations later migrated out of Africa, they encountered environments with much less intense sunlight. Suddenly, dark skin became a disadvantage. You need some UV radiation to produce vitamin D. So populations that migrated north evolved lighter skin. The MC1R gene shows different mutations in European populations. East Asian populations evolved light skin through different genetic changes entirely. This is convergent evolution. The molecular clock data suggests these adaptations happened fairly recently, probably within the last 30,000 to 50,000 years. The key point is that losing hair required a cascade of genetic changes. First, mutations that reduced hair growth, then mutations that adjusted skin pigmentation. Remember how humans retain terminal hair in certain areas? The genes for hair growth are still present everywhere in your body, but different genes get turned on and off in different locations. In areas where humans retain thick hair, those regulatory switches kept the hair growth genes fully active. On your scalp, this probably relates to thermoregulation. In your armpits and groin, the retained hair serves a different function. These areas contain specialized sweat glands that produce odor-causing secretions. The hair helps disperse those scents. Facial hair in men is particularly interesting because it's controlled by sex hormones. Testosterone activates additional regulatory switches during puberty in males. Modern human populations show significant variation in body hair. Mediterranean populations tend to have more body hair than East Asian populations. This reflects different selection pressures and different evolutionary histories. What's really remarkable is how fast all these changes happened. From the first mutations around 1.2 million years ago to the diversification over the last 100,000 years. Human hairlessness evolved in an evolutionary eye blink. This tells us that the selection pressures must have been enormous. Natural selection was operating at maximum intensity. When geneticists look at the patterns of variation, they find signatures of recent selection, long stretches of DNA with very little variation. This is the genetic fingerprint of evolution in action. Every human alive today carries these mutations. We are quite literally the descendants of the ones who survived being naked, when being naked was dangerous. Sleep now. Let the genetic code dissolve into dreams. Here's what most people don't realize about losing our fur. It wasn't just a cosmetic change. It fundamentally transformed what it meant to be human. Once your ancestors shed that protective coat of hair, they became vulnerable in ways no other primate had ever experienced. And vulnerability is one hell of a catalyst for innovation. Think about it. A chimpanzee can sleep under a tree when it rains and wake up uncomfortable, but alive. Try that as a naked human in a temperate climate, and you're looking at hypothermia. You need shelter, fire, and clothing just to survive. So here's the question. If being naked made us so vulnerable, how did we become the most successful large mammal on the planet? The answer is that our nakedness forced us to become inventors. Let's start with clothing. Lose your fur coat, and you need a replacement. We can date the invention of clothing through lice. Genetic analysis of body lice shows they diverged from head lice somewhere between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. That's when body lice evolved to live in clothing. So by around 100,000 years ago, your ancestors were wearing clothes. This represents a cognitive revolution. Making clothing isn't like picking up a stick. You have to imagine the finished product before you start. You need to develop entirely new technologies. Scraping hides, creating needles and thread. More importantly, you have to teach these skills to your children. Clothing manufacture became one of the first truly complex technologies. This created selection pressure for teaching ability and learning capacity. But clothing was just the beginning. You need fire, not just for cooking. You need fire to literally stay alive through the night. Early humans had been using fire opportunistically for maybe 1 million years. But hairlessness created pressure to control fire systematically. Archaeological sites from around 400,000 years ago show evidence of systematic fire use. This represents another technological leap. Fire management requires planning, knowledge of materials. It's chemistry and engineering without the formal concepts. Fire also changes when and where humans can socialize. It created a focal point for evening gatherings. This is when storytelling evolved, when elder knowledge began to be systematically transmitted. The technology that we needed because we lost our fur became the centerpiece of human cultural evolution. And then there's shelter. Naked humans cannot sleep rough. We need protection. This forced our ancestors to become builders. Early shelters were probably simple, caves and rock overhangs. But caves aren't everywhere. So humans learned to build. The earliest constructed shelters date back at least 400,000 years. This represents something revolutionary, the ability to create artificial environments. This skill set would eventually let humans colonize literally every land environment on Earth. The Arctic, the tropical rainforests, the deserts. No other large mammal lives in all these environments. But humans were everywhere, not because we biologically adapted, but because we culturally adapted. Our nakedness, which should have been a fatal weakness, became our greatest strength. Let your breathing slow even more now. So slow, you barely notice it. But the consequences went beyond just technology. Hairlessness changed our social dynamics, because when you're naked, you're visible. Every scar tells a story. Physical condition, age, health status, these become immediately obvious. This created new opportunities for social signaling. Body decoration emerged as a way to communicate identity and status. Ochre and other pigments show up in archaeological sites from at least 100,000 years ago. Humans were painting themselves, creating visual markers. Modern humans continue this tradition in wildly diverse ways. Every culture has developed elaborate practices around body hair maintenance. Some remove it almost entirely. Others cultivate specific styles. What's fascinating is that humans are the only species that deliberately modifies its hair. This behavior only makes sense in a species that's already mostly hairless. And we're not done evolving. We're still losing it. Modern humans have less body hair than humans did 10,000 years ago, because we've created artificial environments, climate-controlled buildings. Natural selection for body hair has essentially stopped. Some models suggest that in another 100,000 years, humans might have even less body hair. But here's what's truly remarkable. None of this matters for human survival anymore, because we long ago transcended the biological constraints. We lost our fur and had to invent clothing that made us inventors. We needed fire and had to control it. That made us engineers. We required shelter and had to build it. That made us architects. Every vulnerability forced us to develop new capabilities, new technologies, new social systems. That's the real consequence of hairlessness. It changed what we were capable of becoming. It transformed us from just another African ape into something unprecedented. A species that could adapt to any environment, not through evolution, but through innovation. We are naked because our ancestors needed to run under the African sun, or because they spent time in the water, or because they needed to avoid parasites, or because sexual selection favored it. Probably all of these reasons played some role, but we are human, truly human, because being naked forced us to become something more than our biology. That's the legacy of hairlessness. Not just the strange appearance it gives us, but the extraordinary capabilities it forced us to develop. We lost our fur, and in losing it, we gained the world. Let everything soften now. Let the weight of these ancient stones, these impossible journeys, these voices from the past, all fade into gentle darkness. You've traveled far enough for one night. So here's where we end up after following the trail of our missing fur across millions of years, with a simple but profound realization. There was no single moment when humans lost their hair. No dramatic mutation, just layer upon layer of evolutionary pressures. The Savanna Hypothesis, running under the brutal African sun. The Aquatic Ape Theory, maybe spending enough time in water. The parasite problem, every louse, every tick, providing natural selection with another reason. Sexual selection. Smooth skin becoming a signal of health. Social signaling. The ability to blush, to show emotion. None of these explanations alone is sufficient, but together they paint a picture. Hair had to go. And when it did, everything changed. Without hair, we needed clothing. Without fur's protection, we needed shelter. Without hair to provide insulation, we needed fire. The thermoregulation problem forced us to become the planet's best endurance athletes. The need to cool our overheating brains drove selection for more efficient neural structures. The social aspects of hairlessness, the ability to read emotions on bare faces, that laid groundwork for the sophisticated social systems. We are naked apes, and that nakedness connects to language, tool use, art, culture, everything that separates us from our closest primate relatives. Your ancestors were those individuals, the ones who survived despite being naked and vulnerable, who turned a potential weakness into humanity's greatest strength. Every time you sweat through a workout, you're using the cooling system that hair loss made possible. Every time you bundle up against the cold, you're compensating for the insulation your ancestors lost. Every time you read emotion on someone's face, you're using the communication advantages that bare skin provided. We are the descendants of the naked apes, and that nakedness made us human. Rest now in that understanding. Let it hold you softly like water, like silence, like the space between stars.